Good morning, my dear students. Once again, welcome back to English time. Hope you are all doing fine at home. Have you read the story? Yes. And have you got a clear idea about the single stories and the danger of single story? Yes. Today we are going to wind up that lesson. Okay. So, where do we stop? Where do we stop? Yes, the single story in the mind of whom American roommate about Africa. Yes, it was very clear now. Yes, so today let's go to the last part of this lesson. I began to realize that my American roommate must have throughout her life seen and heard different versions of this single story. Then I began to realize she never complained against this whom that American roommate had she studied about what was the reason for that roommate's behavior, and she understood such a picture was given to whom that people in America. So how can we criticize that roommate? No, it was clear. That is what saying. I began to understand that my American roommate must have throughout her life seen and heard. Throughout her life, that American roommate must have heard and seen what different versions of this single story. Means smart Africans are like this. They know only what animals, different types of animals are there. Then what is there? Yes, beautiful landscapes are there, and so like that. Then a professor once told me that my novel was not authentically African, and this is what very important paragraph. In many exams, they gave this same paragraph and asked 5 questions. So, write down there as important when you read this lesson, this particular paragraph, and study it very well. Okay. Once, what is that sentence now? A professor who was teaching whom Adji in that college told her that her novel was not authentically African. Authentically, what is mean by this authentically? Yes, I told you, as you know, if you are a writer, if there is a writer, he will write about his own village, in his own language, about his experience, about the incidents and experiences in her own life, and if she or he will be easily write that particular story if it is from his own or her own life and native place, and if she or he explain it in his own language or mother tongue, it will be very clear. It will be authentic, and we can say. If you or me write about African story, a story in which Africans are characters or Americans are characters, we will not be able to write it as an authentic one. Why? Because we know something about them, and we will try our best to study about that particular people or that situations and climate and their nature and all from books, and whatever written in that books will be there as our knowledge. So something will be missing there. But at the same time, when you or me write about our own Kerala and life in Kerala, no doubt, life in our own district Malappuram, it will be authentic. Why? Because we personally know it very well, so there is no problem. But at the same time, if you write about others, there will be a problem. So here Adichie, who is from where? Africa. But professor, he is not not an uneducated man. He is a professor. He made such a comment. What no? Your works are your novel is not authentically African. I did not know what African authenticity was. And Adichie who got it out. She couldn't understand what was African authenticity. What is he saying? Professor? The professor told me that my characters were too much like him, an educated and a middle class man. In Adichie's novel, that main characters were what? Educated and a middle class man. Such people were not much in were African countries, or especially in Nigeria. So if she writes about if she writes or if she creates a character, that should be from Africa. As you know, Nigeria, when you hear Nigeria, you will also think so many poor people are there, they don't have anything to eat. Such a thinking may be there in your mind also. Am I correct? Sometimes you may think like that, because you do not have an idea that Nigeria is a rich country, and people who are very rich, middle class, and gentlemen. You will feel pity on them, no doubt about that, if you haven't studied more about them. Am I correct? If you hear, I know that if you hear Africa means what, you will think, Africans, what are they? They are very poor people. You may think like that. The same thing is there. So but the characters were similar, like whom the Adichie's characters, most of the characters of Adichie's were as similar as whom? Yes, European or Americans, middle class members, educated. And that's why that professor said her novel was not authentically African. If it is authentically African, according to professor, those characters should not be educated, they should not be middle class people. Okay. My characters draw cars. They were not starving. Whose characters? Yes, Adichie's characters draw cars. At that time, Americans couldn't believe a person from Americans driving a car and living. Such a life was not imaginable for whom? Africans, according to these Europeans and Americans. But her characters were like that. They drove cars, and also they were not starving. I told you, Africans means what? You will think they are very hungry and they do not have anything to eat, and they are waiting for the food from other people, and they are waiting for the help from other people. Such a mentality may be there in your mind also. It is also wrong actually. But if a person who does not study more about or much about whom these Africans, they will have such a thinking in their mind. So according to professor also, such characters should be there in the novels written by an African, but it was not there in Adichie's stories or novels. And she created what? Characters like whom? Characters like Europeans and Americans. That's why he made such a conclusion that her characters were not authentically Africans. Therefore, they were not authentically African. Got it? The same question may be asked. Who said that Adichie's novels were not authentically African? Then you have to say a professor. Why? This reason you have tried. Okay. Then, when I learned some years ago that writers were expected to have had really unhappy childhoods to be successful, I began to think about how I could invent horrible things my parents had done to me. Another thing, when I learned some years ago that writers were expected to have had really unhappy childhoods. Then also she understood what, no, if you are a writer, you are there should be what, there should be problems, or that person should be experienced toward hunger, and childhood should be miserable for such people. Then whenever they grow up, whenever they become writers, it will be easy for them to write about such characters whom those who are starving in their life. That was another single story, we can say. Means what? A writer, if a writer wants to, if a writer expected to write a poor person's life, childhood, they should to experience such a thing. How can we say that? And Adichie became a writer. How could she think about her childhood? His father was a professor and mother was an administrator, and she had a wonderful childhood. How could she remember that her childhood was very pitiful, or a problematic life? Can we say? No. That is I began to think about how I could invent horrible things. Could she remember any horrible things in her life? No. How? If there is, we can easily find out. But if there is no worries in her childhood, how could she invent it? Is it possible? No. But the truth is that I had a very happy childhood, full of laughter and love, in a very close-knit family. And what was the truth? Most of the people, they think what Africans had such a very poor, bad, miserable childhood. But how was the childhood of Adichie? It was a happy childhood, full of laughter and love. Full of laughter and love, because her family, they were rich and educated family, so they were very happy in a very close knit family. They were very close. Okay, so close knit family. Close knit means what? A very very close family, we can say. But I also had grandfathers who died in refugee camps. But at the same time, but I also had grandfathers. Her grandfathers, they died in refugee camps. Their life was very miserable one. My cousin Polly died because he could not get adequate health care. But at the same time, she can say some examples. But her cousin Polly died because he could not get adequate health care. Without getting adequate health care, her cousin died. One day, one of my closest friends, Oklahoma, died in a plane crash because our fire trucks did not have water. Then what? One of my closest friends, Oklahoma, how did Oklahoma died in a plane crash because our fire trucks did not have water. There was a plane crash in the airport. And if there is a plane crash, what is needed? If there is a fire, if that aeroplanes are got fired, means what will happen? It will not be controlled. If we want to control that fire, what is needed? Water is needed. That fire force will come and they will pour water on that aeroplane. But that particular day, after that plane crash, what happened? There was no water in that fire force will be there in our country. Fire force in that country, what was there? Fire trucks. In trucks, water was not there. That's why they couldn't pour that water and they couldn't control that fire. And in that fire, what happened? Oklahoma was died. So just you think about that. Scarcity of water. In Kerala, water, there is no scarcity. So such problems were also existed. I grew up under repressive military governments that devalued education, so that sometimes my parents were not paid their salaries. Then I grew up under repressive. Repressive means controlling people by force and restricting their freedom. Military government. Here we know in India what is there? Yes, democratic government is there. They cannot use military forces on common people. But military government means they will start use military soldiers to control people, and there will be no rights for people. Okay, but so because of that, in Nigeria, when she was small, yes, there was a military government, and they used their power to obey people, and that military government, they devalued. Devalue means to give a lower value. Yes, making it seem less important than it really is. They did not give value to education. So that sometimes my parents were not paid their salaries, and that's why they did not pay salary for whom? Yes, professors in colleges. If a government supports education, they will give salary to the teachers and professors. But here it was not. All of these stories make me who I am. It's a conclusion. All of these make me who I am. But to insist on, to compel on only these negative stories is not to flatten my experience and to overlook the many other stories that formed me. But to insist on only these negative stories is not to flatten my experience. If I insist on means compel on, or if I give more importance only these negative stories and overlook to many other stories that formed me. Sometimes I will forget to overlook to other stories. So some negatives are there, some positives are there. So the single story creates stereotypes. I told you, stereotypes means what? A fixed idea. What is meant by stereotype? A fixed idea or image that many people have of a particular type of person or thing, but which is often not true. A fixed idea about these Africans. They are like this, uneducated. Yes, believe and they have their own what we can say uneducated life. Not culture is not there, and they are very poor. They cannot do anything. Such a thinking will be there, and that is what stereotype. And actually, that is not true. If it is true, we cannot say that is stereotype, but that is what we believe, that this is what that those people, or this is what about that particular company, or that this is what that company is like this. We just imagine by ourselves, with or without analyzing or studying it clearly. Okay, that is what stereotype. So these all negative comments will make stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. So stereotype means what? We cannot say that is incorrect. They are untrue. They are not untrue, but it is incomplete. That is only a part of that truth. They make one story become only story. That is the problem. This single story. What's the problem now? This single story make one story become the only story. It is only one story. That what single story is only one story about those people. Second story is there. That is truth. we do not pay attention to that second story. We believe only the single story, and that is then by understanding or by believing that single story, we fail to understand the true story about them, which means when we believe that single story, that will become a story about them, and that is what the problem. Okay, so whenever we hear something about someone or some countries or any, we should not believe it. We should find it more about them. We should find many ways to find more about them. If you believe in only one explanation, sometimes it will make a stereotypic vision in your mind. Have you got it? And that is what the single story is. So a single story about anything is wrong, because single story is not wrong, it is a part of truth. Another part is there that we should not leave. Okay, have you got it? And this is what the speech of whom? Yes, our Adichie. Have you got an idea? Hope you got an idea, and read this lesson very carefully. We will go to the activities in the next class. Okay, thank you.